The courtroom was filled with tension as President Donald Trump, the face of the nation, stood before a judge who seemed to harbor personal biases. The atmosphere was charged, as if electrified. All eyes were fixed on the trial. He knew this wasn't just a legal matter, but a moment that could define his future. The judge made a rude remark, looking at Trump with disdain. "We all know who you are, Mr. Trump," the judge said coldly, his voice echoing through the silence of the courtroom. "And how often do you use your power to avoid consequences?" Trump, despite his past, remained calm. Every fiber of his being could feel the rising tension, but he knew that aggression wouldn't help him here. The judge continued to humiliate him, his tone growing even harsher. "This is just a show for you, isn't it?" the judge said again, as though testing him for endurance. Trump slowly raised his head, not allowing himself to be dragged into the game the judge was trying to play. He couldn't help but notice the curious, even surprised looks from some of the people in the courtroom, watching his reaction. His calmness seemed like a desperate attempt to maintain control over the situation. "You speak of me as if I'm a person who can be easily broken, Your Honor." His voice was calm but firm, as if every word was calculated, planned, like a move in a chess game. But not every conflict is won through aggression. The courtroom fell silent. Now, all eyes were on Trump, not the judge. But the judge only gave a dismissive smile, turning back to his papers. "Do you think this is just a game, Mr. Trump?" "There are no rules here, only the consequences of your actions," the judge said, his words drawing a red line beyond which there was only risk. Donald Trump couldn't stand the silence any longer. It seemed he was at a crossroads, torn between maintaining appearances or responding to the attack, but his reaction was unexpected. He looked directly into the judge's eyes and calmly replied, "Your Honor, I understand that you want to appear powerful in front of this audience, but I won't break under your words. I will defend myself and my rights as I always have, through dialogue." The judge shrugged, clearly not expecting such a response. It seemed he would have to change his strategy. The tension in the courtroom had reached its peak. What would happen next? It was unclear to him. Trump quietly but resolutely turned to his lawyers. He knew he had to be 100% careful with his actions, for even one mistake could lead to serious consequences. "Prepare for unexpected turns," he said, never taking his eyes off the judge. "We will see this case through to the end, even if it's difficult." The judge openly looked at Trump, his gaze cold and calculating, as if searching for a weakness to exploit. He smiled, but the smile was filled with contempt. The judge's hands tightened on the desk as he placed the documents into another folder, as though trying to have the last word. "We'll see how you defend your rights, Mr. Trump," the judge said without turning to him. His voice was as firm as stone, and each word radiated an attempt to control the situation. Trump felt the pressure mounting, but his body remained unshaken. The entire courtroom fell silent. Even the rustle of papers seemed to quiet down. This wasn't just a legal matter, it was a battle of characters, where every move counted. He understood that every step he took could be twisted against him. Trump's lawyers cautiously flipped through their papers, trying to understand the direction the trial was taking. Everyone knew the judge wasn't just asking questions. He was trying to apply pressure to make Trump slip up. "Your Honor, I have the right to be here, just like any citizen of this country," Trump said, standing in the center of the courtroom, his voice clear, but beneath it trembled a barely hidden strength. "I am not obligated to respond to your personal attacks." The judge chuckled darkly. "Oh, but you absolutely are, Trump. And I won't let you wriggle out of it," he replied, raising his hand, pointing at the next set of accusations on the desk. "Your elementary manipulations of the truth won't be an obstacle in this court." Trump closed his eyes for a moment, trying to gather himself, not to fall for the provocation. His heart beat faster, but he knew, the calmer he stayed, the stronger he would appear. "I am not manipulating anything. I am defending my dignity, which has been violated. Your words aren't just an attack on me. They are an attack on the principles that build this country, Trump said, placing his hand on the desk in front of him. His tone became more assured, resolute. And then, as if sensing the moment that could change everything, the judge couldn't hold back. His face turned white with anger, and he raised the tension to a new level, throwing full accusations at Trump. So this is what you think. I thought we had rules of the game, but it seems, Trump, that you think you can stay outside of them. The judge's voice rose to a shout, and everyone in the courtroom felt the sharp, almost physical pressure that seemed to try to break Trump. The room fell silent, the stillness almost physically heavy. And suddenly, without warning, Trump stepped forward, moving closer to the judge's desk. He didn't raise his voice, but his presence became a pressure that was hard to ignore. I never thought you, as a judge, could be so easily swayed by emotions. You think I don't feel them? But this isn't the place for these games. His voice was firm and confident. All eyes turned to Trump again. The judge, shocked, shrugged and pushed his papers aside. This was the moment when he decided to stop the verbal battle and attempt to achieve his goal through other means. Your Honor, his words were short, but before him stood a new blow that hovered over Trump. The judge ordered the guards to take him into custody, but this time, Trump wasn't afraid. His gaze was calm and determined. Everyone was surprised at how quickly the guards approached, arresting Trump, even though he remained in place. The situation had changed, but instead of succumbing to panic, Trump simply looked at those present. His confidence remained unshaken as he understood, even in arrest, there was power that could change everything. The judge, unwilling to lose, silently watched this unfold, and a storm of whispers erupted in the courtroom. The real fight was only beginning. The courtroom filled with a rustling sound as the guards grabbed Trump by the arms, and several of them seemed eager to use force. But he, not giving in to panic, calmly looked around at those present, searching for support or at least interest in their gazes. The pressure was more than enough to make even the bravest hesitate, but Trump stood firm, like a massive rock that couldn't be moved. Don't touch me, his voice was firm, but that was just a small part of his strength. Trump had a plan, and even in this situation, he didn't seem to break. The judge, standing in his place, looked at him again with an arched eyebrow, and it was no longer just confidence, it was a challenge. You think you can manipulate us here? He said, emotionless, like a person who had already made all his decisions, though nothing had yet been decided. This is not your arena, Mr. Trump. Trump smiled, but it was more of a defiant grin. His lawyers began to rise, but their presence didn't change what had already happened. No one could deny the atmosphere was such that almost everyone could feel the tension on the verge of explosion. I don't think this is my arena, but I certainly won't let you manipulate me or this case, Trump said, looking around at the guards who were keeping their eyes on him. His eyes seemed to radiate nuclear energy, and this moment became a test of endurance. The judge, unwilling to back down, nodded to the guards. They, all with stone faces, stepped closer to Trump, almost pushing him forward. Trump didn't move, as if waiting for the moment when this would become critical. Your Honor, this isn't just an attempt to arrest me, it's an attempt to intimidate me. His voice wasn't just firm, it was a challenge. And with every word, he asked a question the judge couldn't simply ignore. Intimidate you? The judge's voice echoed with a wave of desperation. His calm was slowly shifting into irritation, and even sitting became difficult. The judge slowly raised his hand, as if trying to calm the situation, but with every movement of Trump's, he felt he was losing control. Do you think you're invincible? Trump stood his ground. This was the moment when his strength began to push the judge's reserves of restraint to the limit. I don't think I'm invincible, Trump replied, raising an eyebrow. I just know what I'm doing. And here, in your court, you don't have the right to deny me the opportunity to fight. The silence in the room was broken only by the loud sound of a fist hitting the table, as Trump's lawyer stood up. However, his words couldn't definitively divert the judge's gaze from Trump. "Your Honor, this is unacceptable." "Our client has the right to justice," the lawyer exclaimed, trying to prevent the situation from escalating further. But it only pushed the tension higher. The judge raised his hand to interrupt the lawyer, and for the first time during the entire process, his expression became merciless. "I already hear what you want," and his words rang out like a chain of metal balls rolling on the floor. "You want me to punish you, don't you?" But that was only half of what he had to say. Everyone could feel how, word by word, the judge was raising the stakes, taking the conflict to a new level. "Punish? I just want justice." Trump shouted this straight into the judge's face. With every word, his harshness became more and more evident. "If you're a real judge, then you won't be afraid to question your own decisions." His gaze became incredibly penetrating. The judge didn't stop. And even when the guards approached Trump to escort him out of the courtroom, there was nowhere for him to retreat. Everything could change in an instant. Everyone became a witness to a real battle, a battle for control, for justice, for what mattered in that moment. This moment became a test for both. But the main question remained: who would break first? Everyone in the courtroom was on edge. Trump, almost feeling the air about to explode, did not flinch for a moment. His eyes, already burning with fire, locked onto the judge, as if searching for a weak link. The entire room held its breath. The guards remained still, like shadows, and it seemed like the calm before the storm. The judge, unwilling to lose control, lowered his head and took a step toward Trump. His hand trembled slightly as he tried to maintain his resolve. "You won't be able to handle this," he said, his voice somewhat muffled, but the words rang loud. Trump laughed softly. It was a laugh that made everyone realize he was no longer afraid. "I won't," he repeated, laughing louder. "And don't you see that it's you who can't handle this?" His words cut through the air like knives. The judge saw that the situation had become unpredictable. His face, which had been calm, now tightened like a string about to snap. Trump continued to stand firm, undeterred by the pressure, and his gaze was such that it could break any heart. "You are a real challenge for the system," the judge said, raising his voice. "This isn't just a case, it's a setup for your own show. And you will pay, no matter how long it takes." Everyone in the room fell silent, understanding that this conflict had already crossed the line. Trump, instead of backing down, only drew closer to his finale. "I'm not afraid of responsibility, I just won't let this system break me," he replied, moving forward. His movements were confident and precise. The room seemed ready to explode, but for a moment, everything froze when the judge felt he could no longer stop the hurricane. "You're not just standing here as the accused, you become part of what's breaking." The judge seemed to search for any words to regain control of the situation. His frustration was clear, but there was something more: fear that this battle could result in the complete destruction of his authority. Trump, not backing down, replied, "I am part of everything that's breaking, and I will fight to the end. You and this system will feel it." Suddenly, Trump's lawyers approached him and placed their hands on his shoulders. It was a signal that the moment had reached its climax, and from here, things could go off script for the judge. But Trump wasn't stopping yet. "Well, let's play by your rules," he turned to the judge. Then, almost on command, leaned toward his lawyers. "Now you'll see who truly runs this case." The judge, knowing he wouldn't be able to control the situation calmly this time, sharply pointed to the guards. "Get him out." The command sounded like an explosion. But even these words no longer had the effect they were meant to create. Trump was prepared for this. His heart beat steady, with no trace of fear. Everyone around prepared for the next move, and no one doubted it. The conflict had reached a critical point where every movement could change everything. Trump did not stop, and his gaze made the judge realize he wasn't the only one who would decide who would come out victorious in this game. The situation was unfolding, but no one had any guarantees that it could be stopped. The conflict unfolding in the courtroom had reached its climax. It seemed that one more step and the justice system would shatter into pieces. Trump, leaving no room for doubt, placed everyone before a choice. Either the system yields, or it breaks under his pressure. The judge glanced at his watch, his gaze filled with the loss of control, and there was anxiety in his eyes. The people in the room began to feel the tension, their hearts were racing faster, and every movement seemed crucial. But instead of resorting to harsh measures, the judge took a deep breath and raised his hand. "Enough," he said, and the sound, like a gust of wind breaking the silence, cut through the air. Everyone froze. "This is not a court, this is a war where both sides have made their bets," he continued, his voice firm but carrying the fatigue of the struggle. "But we cannot go down this path. Trump, your methods may be aggressive, but that doesn't mean they are right. You won the battle, but you will not win the war if you continue acting as you have until now." Trump, looking at the judge, did not respond. He stood calmly, as if knowing that this was not the end, it was a new chapter in his fight. But he was ready to accept the challenge. He knew that for him, these words were not a defeat, but an opportunity to continue. "So I have decided." The judge paused, looked at those present, and it seemed he had made up his mind that the time had come for an important decision. "Your case will be transferred to another court for further consideration. We cannot allow one person to have such powerful control over all of us, so a decision will be made according to new principles." There was no sound in the room. Everyone was stunned. Trump smiled. It was not a defeat. This was a new arena where he could face even stronger opponents. "I'm always ready for new battles," he said, addressing the judge. "But right now it seems I've won, haven't I?" The judge sighed. "Maybe. But this is just the beginning." Trump turned to his lawyers, and everyone in the room instinctively understood that this day, this trial, was just the first act of a grand story, where the main character had yet to speak his final word. The system that created him could not break his belief in victory. And though today he did not achieve the ultimate victory, he knew this was just the beginning.